Sir,
as we start getting everybody logged in today. Kate, glad you made it. How's the new office?
It's wonderful.
Is
Thank
it?
you. We moved into a new space last week.
Excellent. Yeah, you blew me off because you're removing.
I know, I'm sorry. We didn't have internet yet.
That does put a kink in things. A couple of things. I would always request that everybody be on video and be fully interactive. Anytime you have any questions whatsoever, be sure and just jump in with any and everything. But it does help us to know that, when we see a name that somebody's actually there. And occasionally we get a name, I don't see any of those right now, but occasionally we get a name that's Steve's iPhone or something. So try to have whatever shows up on the screen to be who you are. That's helpful. And Kate, I'm sure we still have quite a few logging in here. So anybody, before we get started on our talking a little bit about Facebook for a second, anybody have any questions about anything else real quick? Don't all speak at once.
Master Oliver.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this just came up yesterday. I have a student that's getting really poor grades in school. And so she's in the after school program. Mom's talking about maybe taking her out for 2 weeks till her grades improve. But I wanted to get some opinions on what you guys might think I could do on my end. One, she's in our leadership and training program. I think I was going to suspend that until her grades come up, but just want to get some quick feedback on some ideas on the.
Can I answer that, Master Oliver?
Yeah, let me do a half a sentence. Both of those suggestions were the complete opposite of what you would want to do, but go ahead, Master Smith.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, are you using the academic awards at the graduation?
Well, not yet. We will be.
Yeah, it's your next graduation, but I would be
Yeah,
telling.
that'll be in May.
Yeah, perfect. And I would be telling everybody about that and letting the parent know that that's what martial arts is going to do for her. Because if she wants to get good grades, it's the same thing that's going to help her to be good in martial arts. One, she has to pay attention. So we're using our 4 laws of concentration and teaching her how to focus and concentrate better. So she'll listen better, in class. 2, we're going to develop her discipline better. And that's what kids need is self-discipline, because they first have to discipline themselves before they can accept the discipline of others. And if she'll start that self-discipline with us, then it'll carry over into her schoolwork and she'll do her homework. Because if she wants to make good grades in school, there's only 2 things she has to do: listen to the teacher and do her homework.
Right.
That's what our martial arts is going to teach her. That's why a lot of kids don't do well in school, is because they don't have good focus and they don't have good discipline to do their homework. Well, you've got to first teach them discipline, teach them the 4 laws of concentration before we can make sure that it's going to carry over into their school. So let's
Okay.
get to work on that, and that's going to help.
Okay.
Use some other things that she likes to do, maybe her video games or TV time or video or internet time off, make her do that as punishment rather than
Spend
the thing
it.
that's going to help her the most.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now that Master Smith threw all that out, let me reframe it for them. My child is having difficulty in math, and so I want to hold the math tutor for 2 weeks until my child's math grades improve. Logically, does that make sense? My fitness levels have been declining, so I want to take a couple weeks off of the private trainer because obviously I need to have some motivation to get back in shape before I work with a private trainer again. See,
Gotcha.
that's where all of that conversation, all that suggestion is like completely ass backwards opposite, right? Is what you don't want to do is have a parent feel like martial arts and all the wonderful things that we accomplish is the reward. And I'm going to pull away the reward because they're not achieving in some other level. No, we're the tutor. We're the point at which they're learning discipline and focus and confidence and discipline. And we may need to double down on an awful lot of those character development issues, everything else, if the results aren't hitting what we want them to be. But we certainly don't want to take them all away, because what happens after 2 weeks? Well, everything's gone further downhill. Well, I'm not letting you go back until you're better. Well, okay, it's this self-defeating backwards, ridiculous cycle. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. I thank you for that, because then I'm going to have a meeting with mom today, and I can relay that to her. I think that's fantastic. Thank you.
And remember, the A team doesn't, the academic awards at graduation doesn't mean they had all A's. It means they had an A or a B average.
AB average, right?
And the A doesn't stand for all A's. It stands for academic.
Correct.
And Master Oliver, before we get started,
you.
we want to get familiar with everybody that's on the meeting. And sometimes we have staff that's on that we don't know. And if we don't see their face enough. So I would like to have a couple people introduce themselves and tell us what school they're from. And that way we can get a little more familiar with them. Like Izzy, could you introduce yourself to everybody and tell them what school you're from?
Hi everyone, I'm Izzy. I train and teach at True Balance Karate under Master Housdens. Working there for the last year. It's been a wonderful time. They've been opening up my eyes a lot to how to. They taught me a lot on how to teach, and that's just been like an invaluable skill set. It's been changing my mind a lot, like on like lots of things, especially in the last week or so, where I'm having all these wonderful students lead classes, for example, now. And because before I would kind of ball hog the karate a little bit. Exactly. I would want to do I want to do all the forms, I want to do all the punching, me and stuff. But it's been very rewarding when I'm on the sidelines. I'm like, so and so, right, come up, lead the class. And now all these parents that are sitting on the sidelines, their faces are all lit up and they're taking pictures, videos with their cameras and stuff. And it's proud. I'm like, oh, that's better than just me hogging all the karate for sure. So
awesome. And let me commend Paul Helfand. He's got his wife on and staff on, and Larry and Ogle are on. I'm telling all you guys that you have staff. It really helps to have them on. I can see with Izzy as one of your instructors, you can see the enthusiasm in his voice, which is very important for an instructor. So to be able to have that kind of energy rather than somebody that just kind of sits back and doesn't say anything and is a little lethargic. So these staff members you have on the meeting, make sure they're asking questions and get a clarification on something, and let us get to know them a little bit and get engaged. But obviously the first step is being on the call. So congratulations, Izzy and Paul, for
thank you, sir.
Yeah, good. And if I could, I'll whine a little bit more. Sal and Jen and Melissa and Dervish and Sue and Leonardo and Krista, Russ, and Tiana, if you could stay on camera. And Sal, sooner or later, we're going to get you just put a reoccurring appointment in your calendar and be at your desk rather than in the car. Because then I will remind everybody that FaceTime, Zoom, and any other video conferencing does not work if you're mobile. It does not work on cell connections from the car, one thing or another. Please just put a reoccurring appointment and then set aside the time to be at your desk rather than running around where you're going to have a bad connection.
Yeah, and if you're connected to the internet, it's gonna work much better than if you're connected mobile on a phone line, through your carrier. So that's why he likes you to be. I know sometimes I've been stuck out coming from an event or something and had to stop at a Starbucks to go in there and use their line, or stop at a place and actually log on with my iPad or something. And if you have to do that, that's fine too. Just know that if you're in the car, you can listen, but it's hard to see. You know, usually once you start talking, it'll mess up. So
Yeah,
that's-
given what you just said was nonsensical, Master Smith, let me say it differently. Being in a fixed location on Wi-Fi or a hardwired connection, rather than being on a cellular connection and moving, is the thing that is works. What we always know is people who are in a car and they're on a cellular connection, they want to ask a question, we can't hear what they're saying, they fade in and out, one thing or another. So on video conference, it is important to be at a fixed location and to be on a Wi-Fi signal or a hardwired high-speed internet connection, not on a cellular connection.
Yep, that's what I meant by stopping at Starbucks.
No, I understand. I was just clarifying because what you said and what you meant weren't the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, let's Kate, let's we seem to have gotten closer to a quorum here. I have one bitch, Kate, and let me share it with you. What I've been preaching many years since I stole the language from Jay Abraham, although it was the principle I was using many years prior to there being an internet, is I've been using the word the Parthenon. Always have 20 different things going on. If you want 20 new students a month, always have 20 different things going on. Never get dependent upon one thing. And my bitch is that the Facebook advertising has been working so well that an awful lot of people have gotten freaking lazy and aren't doing anything else. So
Yeah, Kate, would you quit doing such a damn
I
good job?
know, gosh, come on.
well, the
It
answer
makes
is that one, I keep trying to get them to throw more money at the actual ad buys to keep that result going up. But two is to recognize that Facebook is going to have months that it has hiccups and brain farts and so forth, and as is Google, as is TV, anything else that you're doing. So we do have to have that diversified source of new traffic. So in a way, I'm dead serious. Is the reminder to everybody, we'll go after this more in later, is to have a bunch of different stuff going on. The other thing that we find, and it's absolutely verifiable, the schools that have bandit signs up, banners up, rat cards out everywhere, that are spending money on Google, that are doing a good job on search, that are doing flyers, that are doing direct mail. The ones that are doing all of that stuff are getting better results from Facebook, right? And the ones that are just sitting there relying on one thing going on. In fact, this, in the last month or two, they're still getting really good results. It just, they could get another 20% bump even from that one source by having the synergy of all those other things going on. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And I just had a conversation just like that yesterday with Amber, who works for Greg Macy for Ripple Effect. And they were getting a lot of people coming in that weren't necessarily on their tracking sheet from the Facebook ads, but were saying that they had seen them on Facebook. So we're going back and attributing some of those people back to Facebook, but that's a pure result of them being in a lot of different places and people remembering them from, the source was Facebook, but they had seen them in their website. They had seen them through some signage that was out and about, and, knowing where the studio was and all that kind of stuff. So 100% that, the more places you are, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob, if you can figure out where the background noise is other than my 3 barking dogs, I'll see if I can do something about the 3 barking dogs. But Amanda, give us some, not Amanda, Kate, give us some updates on the results for February.
Yeah, we had started off the year really strong as of last month when I was talking to you guys, and the same has remained true for all of February. We've had some really steady lead volume and really strong costs coming in for opt-ins across the board with our 30 something or so studios that we're working with, 25 or 30 studios. I don't know what number it is right now. But we have, like most of the schools we had a school with 115 leads last month. We had one with 71, an 86 lead month, a 49, a 70, a 59, a 38, a 93. a 62, a 40, and those are the front end leads coming in. And then we have some really strong results on the back end as to appointments being booked with, people booking 20, 30, 40, 50% of the people that are coming through in for their intro classes. So really strong month. And March has started off very similarly with, the same projection as to the number of leads that they probably got around in February, that they'll probably get those in March as well. And, with a lot of schools, we've started getting into some of the spring-based copy and imagery, get people ready for the next season coming through. We even have some summer camp type stuff going for a few schools. There's a lot of different offers out there right now, but still, the 2 free weeks and the 10 classes for $27 are still definitely our 2 top performers across the board. And we have a lot of schools who are really taking advantage of that and getting a whole bunch of intros and enrollments booked off of the leads coming through for very low cost.
Excellent. What are some of the to-dos and the things perhaps not to do that you're seeing across the schools you're working with?
Yeah. One thing, we say it every month is, of course, tracking your numbers and letting us know how appointments and intros are going as you get people through. We can take that information and make tweaks to targeting on a couple of different levels. So always giving us feedback is really important. And we also, a don't do. A don't do is to wait 12 hours or 3 hours to call them. We do have some schools that, even if they have the automated pieces set up, they still end up calling them, 3 and 4 hours later. And by then, their number of getting people, their chances of getting people actually booked for their intro, skyrockets down the longer you wait after the person opts in. So that's always one that we see. We also have seen a really good improvement for a lot of the schools that we've been working on too, because the leads do come in time stamped, and there's a lot of schools that their staff is totally on it and they're calling within a couple minutes, and that's really awesome. And it's being tracked on their spreadsheet. So kudos to there's a whole bunch of schools that have made some significant improvements. So that's been really good. And it shows in their enrollments and in their numbers coming through as well. So that's another one. I don't have too many don't do's. Have it pretty well dialed in, but let's see if anything hops out here as I look through things.
Well, while you're doing that,
Yeah.
let me go back to a couple points you made. We spent a lot of time going through the numbers really tightly on the Mile High schools here, and here's a direct comparison. One of the 2 schools, and they're not very far apart. What are they? Master Smith, maybe 7 miles apart, using the same ads, everything else. One of them had a 36% conversion rate from lead to appointment. The other one had a 66% conversion rate, lead to appointment. The difference is on the level of efficacy on making an outbound call, right? Mm-hmm. We had a long conversation with, I forget who it was, if that was Melissa or if that was Matt White. We had a long conversation with one of the schools that was doing the, landing page, make the appointment. And they were having a really low a low show rate for the intro. And the conversation was, well, how quickly are you calling the people? Well, if they don't make an appointment, we follow up. That was the answer. It's like, no. Whether they make an appointment or they don't make an appointment, you try to get them on the phone while they're still looking at the page. And again, that's one of those things is, they make the appointment for themselves for the intro. It seems like it's working pretty well. It's a nice addition. However, it doesn't eliminate the need for an outbound call, for human to human, build a relationship, rapport, and to immediately get them on the phone.
Yeah. And I think that counts between, phone calls and text messages. I know a lot of studios send a text message pretty immediately. I mean, we know people don't necessarily answer numbers that they don't recognize. So following up with a voicemail and a text message right afterwards, saying who you are and, you know, that sort of thing, it really makes a big difference too, in getting people to convert, because then they'll recognize the number coming forward again.
Yeah, in fact, we had that conversation again yesterday with the third Mile High School. It's a new opening here, and that's what he was doing. And so his show rate at every stage was really bad. And he said, "Well, I'm getting hold of him. I'm scheduling an appointment. It's like, well, okay, what's missing here?" He was never talking to him on the phone. It was all by text, right? And you're exactly right. Text is far better than just an outbound call, because people won't recognize an outbound, you know, a number they won't answer with a number they don't recognize. That's what I was trying to say. However, if we text them, send the V card, so the contact information, and we have the communication in the text of, "I'm available now, why don't you give me a call?" Or if you're available, I'll give you a call. Here's the number I'm going to be calling from. Is, you know, that's the transition point. It's just like communicating. Okay, what I've been telling everybody is asynchronous communication is horrible for building a relationship, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's text message, direct mail, or email, is I always want to either be face-to-face or on the phone with them to answer their questions, build a relationship, build rapport, and then that helps get the show rate, the conversion rate, everything else way up.
And you heard Kate say that one of the things that helps the best is if you don't have she needs your numbers. You know, make sure you're letting her know, you know, what the appointment and show rate and that kind of stuff, because it makes a difference on how to tweak the ad to make sure that it's pulling, because you know, they pull for other people in their area, but not every area is exactly the same. So that's why you've got to kind of fine tune it to your area. And that's where her expertise comes in handy, rather than getting somebody in your area that's doing Facebook for you, because most of our members who have been doing the Facebook on their own and with somebody they know in the area that's done it before, they tend not to have the kind of numbers that we have. So make sure, you know, the key is that that we're getting a lot of enrollments, and we're getting quite a few that are starting to buy into the keeping their numbers. I know Delfino had a good month with 25 enrollments, and then started the month off already. And this was from yesterday, 20 leads already, and 4 enrollments and 2 renewals already starting off March after having 25 enrollments. And he said missed his goal, his cash goal, by 2,000. Paul Helson did 34 enrollments and did almost 50,000 in cash, and Steve Del Castello did 50,000. Now these are guys that that we're not talking about Amanda and Jan and the ones that were doing 100,000 plus, but realize before you can get to 100,000, you got to get to 50. So those schools that were doing 15 or 20 are now doing 30 or 40, and then they're doing 50 or 60. So it's got to keep moving up, with giving Kate that feedback, so then she can tweak that part of your marketing and realize, don't sit back and let Kate do all the work, even though you're paying for that. You got to go out and do what Master Oliver was saying on the, you know, the Parthenon of marketing.
Well, yeah, but the Kate, what's the cost per lead ranging right now?
It's ranging from $5. Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Yeah.
From $5 to about $20 across the board.
Okay.
With lots of people in the low teens right now.
Okay. So if everybody has a pen and piece of paper, hopefully you do, you know, write down that number and think about how that tracks. So if the cost per lead was, let's take the higher end of the spectrum, $15 per lead. And then if you were converting at 65%, right? So at which again is not the, you know, we've seen as high as 80%, but 65% is what Westminster, our school, was doing this month. So $15 divide by 0.65, that means the cost per appointment would be 23. And then if you were converting 80% of those to an intro, that means you're paying $28 per intro. And if you converted, let's say 60% of them to an enrollment, you're paying $48 per enrollment. Now, anchor in those numbers. So, what I've said many times is, one of the most profitable schools I ever saw was paying $1,100 per enrollment. If you were doing what I recommend, $300 or $400, even $500 initially, plus the first month. So let's say we're doing 300 and 247. Now you're getting 547 down. I would be tickled to death, jumping up and down, having a party if it was costing me $547 to get a new enrollment, right? Does that make sense, Kate? If you were making a sale that many of them are going to be with you for 4 years and you were covering the cost of the marketing on day one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we know, big marketers, I mean, people you see on TV all the time, Nutrisystem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they go negative, what's the other one? The face cream, Gunty Rinker stuff. They'll go negative for 9 months before they make money. So if the average cost per lead is $15 and you do decent ratios, that means the cost per enrollment is about 48. Now, even if you cut all those numbers in half, you're still at $200 or $250 per enrollment. Mm-hmm. And again, my target for our members is to get it to the point where you're doing enough of an initial enrollment. Again, I'd like to see it be like 500 plus 297, but wherever you're at right now, where that number, that the cost of getting them in the door is paid for by that number. And so it makes absolute sense. And it's the biggest mistake most business owners make, is to be hyper cheap and hyper, what's the right word? Stingy in their marketing, and to not realize they have to, spend some money to get them in the door and then accelerate from there.
And that's why it's so important to keep those stats accurately. So, I mean, this is what major corporations do. They know how to budget their marketing based on what their gross receipts are. And you've got to know how to calculate what is each one of these leads costing you? What is each appointment costing you? And if you don't know how to figure that, that's Kate's even doing that for you, as long as you give her the numbers. So, it starts with you getting the numbers. It's easy to calculate it. And if you don't know how to do that, it's only as good as your stats that you're keeping. So make sure you keep them as accurate as possible, and stay on those goals. Don't just rely on what the school is going to do. It's going to do. Have a goal that you're working towards. We don't want to be hypocrites. You're telling your students to be a black belt, you got to set goals, and here you are running your school and you're not setting your goals.
Yes. Kate, what would you add to all of this on the results from February and how March is looking going forward?
Don't give up on it. There's just so much, most schools spend, 500 to 600 to 700 a month, and some of them got 100 leads for that last month. And so there are very few other platforms that you can get that kind of result from. And, if you're even getting one enrollment makes up for your ad cost in that case, based on the numbers that Master Oliver mentioned. So get in all the different places, and your signage and your Facebook ads and your website, it all works together, just like we heard from Ripple Effect, and the fact that they were getting people coming in that said that they saw us on Facebook. So learning about where people are seeing you and making sure that you're getting in front of them is just a huge part of the game. And the system that we've been running, I mean, we have people that have been on for over 2 years now. Which is awesome. And, it's great that it just keeps staying the same. It keeps working and doesn't get exhausted as much. And our team, it's our job to make sure that it's not getting exhausted. So that's when we refresh and keep things fresh and, start a new offer or something like that. So, it's one less thing you have to worry about. All you have to worry about is getting them in the door and getting them enrolled.
Yeah. Yeah. Kate, what would you say from a standpoint of, let's look at the last 6 months with spikes in COVID
Mhm.
versus, and everybody's gloom and doom in one thing or another versus what the lead flow has been on your side
Yeah.
for the martial arts schools.
Yeah. Other than some, to be totally honest, some not great and shitty results during the time of the elections and whatnot in, September and October. Those were pretty rough months for almost everyone across the board from a lead volume standpoint and from a cost of lead standpoint. Ever since then, it's been back up and running, and we're back on track with getting 40 to 100 depending on the school's leads per month, and that's remained consistent since the holidays and since then. So I expect that to continue. We don't have a big election coming up this year, so I don't see that being an issue again later in the year. And spring and summer are always really good for people trying new things. And, especially if you can be outdoors, we have lots of schools that either transition back into virtual or are still offering both. That wasn't really a huge obstacle for most of the studios that we've been working with. And, everyone's flexible now. So, it's just whichever one is working for you, the virtual and or the in-person classes, both have been performing really well. And we have lots of schools that they're offering both. So, that's been a huge deal for everyone, and it's kept everyone rolling.
We do get some members who I think look at this in completely the wrong way. They'll say, well, I'm getting ready to market my school because the state is opening up more. Or they'll say, well, we got shut down again, so we can't do much. Well, okay, we've seen, the high performers, states completely shut down. They do 25 enrollments. Of states, opening back up, they're doing 25 enrollments.
Yeah.
And that's do some remote learning support, do the virtual classes, do a lot of above and beyond, do intros via Zoom and enrollment conferences via Zoom. And then when things open up a little bit, go to the park, and then things open up a little bit more, do social distance, but, prearranged by appointment in the school, but do all of the above. And, if the only blip that I have seen is between the ears of the school owners, not the out there in the market. And in fact, the irony is that, it's the same school owners 2 years ago who would have been complaining of, oh, it's soccer season, oh, it's baseball season. None of those, and then all of a sudden, that stuff dries up, or it mostly dries up. Then they're thinking, oh, well, people don't want to come in because Zoom doesn't have value. It's like, well, okay, no, it wasn't true then. It's not true now. There's plenty of opportunity. The other thing, Kate, I don't know if you have an opinion on it, but we have a lot of people who think that there's a time when the switch is going to go on. Let's say it's yesterday and the Texas government says he's going to remove the statewide mask mandate, which really didn't mean as much as people are making it out to be. But from my standpoint, there's no on and off switch.
Right.
There's a gradual return to normalcy.
Mhm.
There's maintaining simulcast. There's doing live. There's marketing the intro, having an option for the intro be a remote or video intro as well as a live intro. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just from an availability standpoint, that gives you a step up above a lot of the other school activities or kids activities and whatnot that are out there. Being able to hit people in a virtual setting or an in-person setting and what they prefer opens up your market hugely, because, and if you're not getting in front of them, then you're just missing out. So continuing, I mean, in my opinion, it would be silly for schools to stop doing virtual, even if things are back to normal, because you're hitting on a whole nother level of person. And maybe someone is just a little too far outside of the radius of where you pull for your school, but to come in to classes all the time, but they are interested in a virtual class, that's a student that you never would have had previously. So making sure that you're offering all of those options as much as you can and hitting people where they are and what they prefer. And that gives you a much bigger market to get in front of than just those that are interested in in-person classes.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Kate about the Facebook marketing and the conversion processes?
I have a quick question, sir.
Go ahead.
Is there a correlation between the level of activity on our Facebook pages that we do, like organically, and the efficacy of the ads? And if so, how much should our goal be for posting and keeping that going?
Yeah. With all of our clients, we recommend, posting at least a couple times a week on your Facebook page. There is a little bit of a correlation in the activity and the engagement that your Facebook page has as a business to how the ads perform. So if you're getting a ton of reactions to posts on your Facebook page, that then helps Facebook know that people like your content. And so that helps the ads as well. So it does push it out a little bit further. Now, I'm not saying you need to be posting every hour or anything crazy like that, because that's impossible. And, once or twice a day is good. And like the more action type information that you can post out there, people in classes, people interacting, that sort of stuff, those are always really strong engagement posts. And if you can tag any of the students in them as well, or parents or whatnot, that just increases your visibility among all of those people who know those people too. You want to get permission on tagging people and things, but you have that opportunity to get it out there. And so Facebook sees, any engagement as good engagement, and that does help things, but it doesn't have to be to the extent of things getting crazy and posting I need to get better posts every 20 minutes or something like that. That's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I think the key that makes all this work with Kate is that you understand your numbers. In other words, if she's getting a lot of leads, but we're not getting appointments, then, and we've had, like Master Oliver just said, two of our Mile High schools that were 7 miles apart with drastically different results. And it was because of what they were doing to initiate those appointments, how quick they were getting back to them, how many times they were trying to contact them, text, email, call, doing all sources of getting hold. So once we have your stats, we can see where the hole is, and then we can fill that hole and then see if a hole appears somewhere else. But, to get them from lead to enrollment is your real goal. And let's keep those percentages higher. I tell those that are stuck in not figuring out how to get those percentages higher, what I tell them is then all you have to do is increase your leads, and then your enrollments will go up. See, there's only two ways to get the enrollments to go up. You get more leads, or you get better percentages from the leads you get. So getting the percentages better from the leads you get is training on all of those phases to see where I have my hole. Even down to where we're tracking the first lesson, the second lesson, how many of those second lessons had an enrollment conference, and then how many of those signed up. Because if we just have first intro and then enrollments, we don't know, was it a problem with the conference, or was it a problem that they never even came back to have a conference? So those kind of things all appear with the stats.
Yeah. Kate, anything else for the team before we let you get back onto your routine in the new office?
No, I think I'm good. I did post in the Facebook group. So if anyone has any questions or wants to pick my brain anymore, feel free to reach out and we'll have a conversation.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the new offices there.
Thank you.
And,
Have a good one, everyone.
And I assume we'll follow up on Tuesday.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And
Thanks, guys.
Master Oliver, I really like that Paul Helton, it's not that he just got 34 leads, but I mean, 34 enrollments and a $50,000 month. It's that he's letting us know. See, you guys got to post this stuff so we know what you're doing. We got Paul Helton, but also Steve Del Castello. We had Paul Grucho, who did over a record month for February, did the most gross he's done. I mean, record in the school. Now this is February. February, I tell you, most of the time, February is a tough month because it's the shortest month of the year. February is for half the country, they're in snow during that time, and there's weather issues with people wanting to come out and stuff. So February is not always an easy month to have a good month. So it takes you taking control and really working the business and making those numbers happen, not just sitting back and wait for them to come into you, but you have to go out there and have a plan put together.
Yeah. And Matt Smith, let's get back on our agenda here, which is the thing that makes your school work is if you have enough new students coming in each and every month consistently, then it's easier to make everything else work, right? It's easy to really focus on retention. It's easy to really focus on renewals. And it's certainly true that we see some schools that have good enrollment flow where their revenue isn't where it needs to be. But it's never true that there's a school with great revenue that's not able to get enough new students in to stay even, right? And so marketing at the front end is always the starting point to fixing your school. And while we want to make sure that we always do, this is our mission in Quick Start above any and everything else, is to teach you how to, metaphorically drink from a fire hose, how to get so much traffic coming in that you're struggling to try to get 20 enrollments done that night because there's so much intro traffic that you got so much lead flow, you're having trouble keeping track of it, that your staff, is overwhelmed, dazed, and confused because of the volume. That's our objective with Quick Start, because then we know beyond Quick Start, we can fix the dropout rate, get it down to 1 or 2% a month. We can fix the average lifetime value of a student, get it to $6,000, $7,000 a month. We can get the average monthly value to be in the $250, $300, $350 range. And then all of the numbers. And that's why, again, Matt Smith, is some of these schools you mentioned, you'll see a school that was at 12,000 and they figure out the marketing. They start getting that stuff to really work. And then we start working on retention and renewal. Of course, having fixed the pricing, then they'll go from 15 to 30 to 60, feels like overnight, right? But it's you got to be really solid on the marketing. And again, there was a common syndrome that happened all of last year. The school owners who complained and moaned and groaned about COVID, it wasn't that in most cases, some cases, but in most cases, it wasn't because they were losing students because they were out of work, losing students because they couldn't afford it, all that kind of stuff, losing students because students didn't like Zoom. In fact, students liked Zoom if it was their only option. What they were doing is they just didn't keep the marketing flow going. And there was this strange perception of, oh my God, everything's shut down. We can't get new students. No, everything is, people can't go sit in a restaurant and eat. That's fine. You can still do first intro, second intro, enrollment conference on Zoom. Absolutely true. The movie theater marketing wasn't working all that well, for sure. But Facebook and Google was skyrocketing and email was skyrocketing. So there's always a corollary if we adapt well. But let's go back to the Parthenon. Master Smith, talk about some of the grassroots things that everybody should be doing that may have forgotten about it, either because they got fat, dumb, and lazy with their Facebook traffic or because COVID lulled them into apathy a little bit with it.
Yeah, and remember, even for you guys that have been with this for a while and haven't been real consistent on going back to that quick start site, make sure that you go back there. Week 2 is we've got 3 videos of grassroots marketing. And what I tell everybody, when you're going through that grassroots marketing, there's going to be things in there that you forgot about, that you're going to say, oh, wow, I did that before and that worked pretty good, but I don't know why I hadn't done it again. I kind of forgot about it. So I tell you, when you watch those videos, the mistake people make is they look at them like they're watching a movie.
Well,
See,
but let's be specific, Master Smith. Some of those grassroots tools are bandit signs out, right? And certainly back last March and April, when businesses were shut down and so forth, and the streets were a ghost town. Yeah, maybe that wasn't working all that well then. Working well now, I know in Denver, traffic jams are back, and people are out running around doing any and everything. It's more or less back to normal on all that kind of stuff, right? So that's a very inexpensive way to get lots and lots and lots of visibility. I know you've talked about, you used to always buy 100 at a time, keep a stack of them in the trunk, at the street corners or at the exits to shopping centers and so forth, put them out.
I gave 20 to every staff member, and every staff member had to put 20 out every week. And I didn't care if they went one day and did it, or whether they did 5 on the way to the school and 5 on the way from school. But, there's so many, even the rack cards and the bandit signs, they seem very simple, but the problem is that if you only did rack cards and bandit signs, it's probably not going to work too good for you. But when you're doing all of this other stuff, when you're on the internet, when you're doing school stuff, when we were doing our live events, we were always out in the community, and some of that is cut off right now.
Well, but it's coming back. So of the grassroots stuff that clearly you should be doing now, probably should have been doing all of last year, is the bandit sign stuff. That's very inexpensive. There's a ton of suppliers that are very inexpensive. There's examples of artwork. There's examples of suppliers. Everything in the Facebook group, all you have to do is search for that. When we talk about rack cards, there's 2 ideas from a standpoint of the local Dairy Queen, all the local merchants, lead boxes and rack cards. Over the years, I kind of grew to dislike lead boxes because you do get a lot of very flaky leads in them. However, they work fine. We had just gotten to the point we could generate so much lead traffic from so many other sources that I started to put that lower and lower down on the priority list. However, the flip side of a lead box is the rack card, and the way that changes the dynamic for good and ill. The way it changes the dynamic is it's just, like a trifold brochure, a third of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. They're very inexpensive. We have a lot of artwork on the print shop. If you go on the member site, we have a lot of artwork. You can download the artwork, print it wherever you want. You can use our on-demand guys, however you want to do it. But usually now it's a full color, 2-side card. And if there's a key to it, it's 1, go get like 300 or 400 locations out. And if you have 250, 300 or more locations out, probably by itself, it's good for 4 or 5 enrollments a month, right? But the other key is, if you have a card that's printed in predominantly, say, green ink, then what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you replace the cards, when you rotate every 6 or 8 weeks, you do one that's predominantly blue, let's say, and then you do one that's predominantly red. And you get it where the cards look different enough that people start to pay attention. And that's a useful tool with bandit signs too. Maybe every 3 months, print one that looks different and just rotate them that way so that people start to notice them, right? But the rack cards are like the simplest, easiest thing you can do. This goes back, Matt Smith. First thing I did when I moved to Denver is I printed trifold brochures and ordered like hundreds of brochure holders. And took a right outside the front door of the first location and just started knocking on every merchant's door and got the little brochure holders in to Dairy Queen and to Pizza Hut and all the different merchants, the local dry cleaners. It's a very easy thing to do. But what it requires you to do is just set aside a few days and keep making concentric circles until you have 300 or 400 locations out in the immediate area from where you're at. And you just keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going until you have those out, right? So Matt Smith, there's bandit signs and there's rack cards. Number two, the physical facility of your school, assuming you have the capability. And there's, again, lots of pictures in the site, having the window clings on the school so that anybody passing by, you have benefits, you have testimonials, smiling kids and adults. You have on the front door, you should have, and by the way, now, not true a year ago, everybody's using and knows what QR codes are. If for no other reason than restaurants shifted to their menus on QR codes, right? Before that, everybody thought it was a big deal about 5 years ago, and then we realized no one was using them. But on the front door of the school, you should have a QR code that leads them to your opt-in page. You should have a text to phone number on that, where it subscribes them to a text message autoresponder. And of course, you capture their phone number. You should have a Ring doorbell that says, if the door is locked, please hit the doorbell to be helped. And of course, then it's going to ring through to your cell phone and you could help them on the spot. You should have the phone number to the school, et cetera. So, and you should have a brochure holder or a flyer holder so that they have something they can pick up and take away with them for to remember you by, right? So you start with that. And then if you can have a big banner with an introductory offer on the front of the school, and it's kind of like the rack cards. If you leave a banner up on the front of the school for more than 90 days, people stop noticing it. But if you change the color, change the offer, change the look and feel 4 times a year or 5 times a year, then they notice it, right? And I see a lot of schools that have a lot of drive-by visibility, a lot of walk-through visibility, but are doing a crappy job on just getting attention. Sometimes
we do that every 6 weeks on the rack cards and the bandit signs.
Yeah,
we change colors every 6 weeks. Another thing for the schools, if you have the availability of space there, the big blow up kicker. I know both Thornton and Westminster Mile High have that big kicker, and anybody that drives down the road or in the center notices that big giant karate kicker. So that way people know that you're there. You stand out among, some people have a pretty good sign, but usually most of the centers have all the signs have to be congruent. You can't have your own unique sign, but putting that big kicker on the front. Some people have put the big balloons that float from above the school, like the Hindenburg kind of, what do they call those shape signs? So you have something above with your school name or offer, free 2-week trial or something, call or website. So if you want to keep all of this organized, you've got to have, what we always say, the expression always be marketing, right? That always be marketing. And so that means you need to get a desk calendar, one of those big ones, and write every day what you're doing for marketing. And if you're not doing something every day marketing in this time period, I'm picking up a lot of what people are doing because I know these are tough times for a lot of businesses. I've noticed I've gotten a lot more coupons in the mail with direct mail offers. I've noticed I've got people coming by my mailbox and putting a brochure or putting a card for their business for some special offer. I notice on my door, I have more door hangers than I ever had before. So all of these we can use too to help expand ours. But if you want, a lot of people say, well, what should I be doing? And, Master Oliver says, do everything. But if you divide it into 3 sections and you say, here's one list of internal marketing, here's one list for external marketing, and then here's another list for internet marketing, then you've got to go through and fill up each one of those. So these things that we're telling you right now, you should be putting in the right one you're doing. And these are all external marketing. Internal is going to be your, any kind of
Yeah, well,
event.
let's stay on this topic for a second, Master Smith.
Okay.
What are some other grassroots ideas that they could be doing? Well, I don't know how many millions of flyers we distributed over the years through McDonald's, Burger King, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, Domino's, and usually in the excuse of it's a charitable fundraiser, right? So we could do like a fundraiser for St. Jude's Hospital, a fundraiser for Children's Hospital, whatever it might be. But, I would go to, the regional person in charge of Domino's, the regional franchisee for Domino's, and say, we're doing a fundraiser for Children's Hospital, and we were hoping you would be a co-sponsor. Well, what do you mean? Well, here's the flyers we're going to distribute. What I would do is I would have Mile High Karate and Domino's Pizza as co-sponsors. I'll pay for all the printing. The offer is an introductory lesson at the school. If you want to add a coupon or something like that, that's certainly fine too. But I'll pay for all the printing. You put them on the boxes and do the distribution. We'll pay for the lessons, the uniforms, and so forth. Every penny that we bring in on it's going to go to the charity, with the recognition that it was a co-sponsored event with Domino's Pizza. So we could do that with Domino's, Pizza Hut. I mean, right now, delivery. Think about Grubhub. Think about all the different restaurants, whether it's Popeyes or around here, it's Tokyo Joe's and Noodles and all of those. They have, in many cases, racks up front where Grubhub and Uber Eats and all the different guys are coming up and doing it. You could pretty easily get them to co-sponsor those kinds of charity events, get them to put the flyer in the box. We've had McDonald's put the flyer in the bag at the drive-through. We've printed tray liners for McDonald's that went on all the trays physically in the location. We've done flyers that went in the bag for Burger King, done tray liners for Burger King. You can go on and on and on. But usually it's in conjunction of the excuse is it's a charitable fundraiser. And I'll tell you an idea that I haven't done, but I thought it was brilliant. Chris Hearn, who's our guy who does SBA loans if you need him, he also has a franchise called Kennedy's, and it's a men's like I think they do hair, but it's mostly like a straight razor, and you go in and sit there and they lather you up and they do straight razor one thing or another. It's a very cool concept, not that I would have any use for it, but one of the marketing ideas they give their franchisees is they go to all the dry cleaners and they pre-print the plastic bags that the dry cleaners use for the clothes, and they pre-print it with the artwork for Kennedy's and the coupon and so forth for Kennedy's. And then they, the dry cleaner has now gotten rid of one of their expenses, which is perhaps even the hangers, but certainly the bags. And they're just using a bag that has the offer and the marketing for this other company on the back, right? So it's another one of those host parasite, host beneficiary type of relationships that works really well.
When you involve the charities, diabetes, there's 30 million people in America that have diabetes. There's 23 million that have cancer. So, either one of those, there's probably hardly anybody, including yourselves, that there's not somebody that doesn't have diabetes or doesn't have cancer within your close range. So, going to those, we've always been able to communicate with our area cancer, area diabetes association. They are more than happy to help expand what you're trying to do. We were doing to help them with their donations, at their booths that they were setting up. they were putting up our coupons to give out for people who make a donation for a 2-week free trial. And it was just something extra that we were giving to them for somebody making a donation. Well, for them, they're thinking, well, this is going to influence somebody else to make a donation that they might not. But for us, of course, we're getting extra potential customers. So, don't just try to do it all on yourself. Call these, any of these charity organizations in your group, in your area, and that could be involved. We had one of our parents that was the head of the cancer awareness in Northern Virginia, and she's the one that actually set up one of the booth things for us. And we didn't have to do anything other than give them our brochures and our flyers, and they did all the distribution for it. Now, we like to be there because what we were doing when they would pick up their coupon, we would actually make the appointment right there and get their contact information. So now we didn't have to wait for them to contact us. We were able to have, just like we did at a spin wheel, they could spin the wheel and win a prize and collect their contact information.
Yeah. And speaking of that type of events, a lot of people are perhaps thinking that event type of marketing doesn't work really well right now. But even in some of the more lockdown states, farmers markets are still happening, and having a booth out at the local farmers market with the prize wheel and running them through the cycle works great. Areas that are opening up more, lots of other different live events and group events are working just fine. And so be on the lookout and see what really is happening in your area. I keep catching myself doing it, is assuming things are going to be closed or assuming things are going to be shut down when in fact they're in many cases, maybe they never did shut down, or they're gradually starting to open, maybe not with as much volume as they would have been, but there's still a lot of stuff out there that you can wrangle. So on the grassroots stuff, let's leave with 2 or 3 other quick ideas. One of the things to always keep in mind is to find other businesses that either are like an exact match for your clientele, or businesses that hit a huge volume of people in your area, or businesses that are huge employers. So, I had really good success with here in Denver. Number one employer for many years was US West, which is now CenturyLink. We ended up having the HR director was a student. We managed to get payroll stuffers, all kinds of offers out. Anytime they had a big corporate event, and this would be, they took over Six Flags, they took over, a local convention center and had employee only things, that let us do anything we wanted at those events for free. Plus they would promote our offer, our different events. Plus they would let us come to their various offices and do, what's basically the equivalent of a PE teacher for the day for their employees. Come in, do a 45-minute class, teach a little bit of fitness, stress release, a little bit of self-defense. So there's all kinds of opportunities. I know Elite MMA in Houston, they were having a great success at my direction with the big oil companies. So BP and so forth that have the big office towers near them there in Houston, they would line something up, usually through the HR department, with those companies, and have great results with those companies, letting them come in, access their employees, do things for their employees. Oftentimes that turned into things either for the employee or for the employee's kids, and either or both is a great idea. So that's one of those things, is finding the big employers. Now, on a more retail basis, if I draw a quarter-mile radius around my school, maybe I'm next door to the big grocery store. Well, the big grocery store has a ton of employees. I can do something both where I talk to the manager about distributing our charitable fundraiser information. Frankly, they were the ones that I always had an easier time getting a yes and a harder time getting them to do anything productive for me, right? In other words, you end up with a stack of flyers by the check stands that they don't put in the bags because they have too many people running around. But also, then I could get them to put flyers in the break rooms. I could get them to do flyers out to all the employees with notices. If they do it electronically, I could get them to do offers for their employees in those things. One of the things I picked up from the fitness centers when I was in that industry is they used to work apartment complexes. And so when I opened here in Denver back in '83, we had an apartment complex behind the school, and I probably ended up with 15% of the residents in that apartment complex was students. And the big condos and the big apartment complexes usually have, at worst case, they have a manager. Sometimes they have a marketing director. Sometimes they have an activities director. But they have a group of people that you can get them to put information in their newsletter. You can do things in their group meeting rooms. You can get them to promote a residence day at your facility, several of them. There's all kinds of things you can do. So if you have a big condo building across the street, or you have an apartment complex behind you, go to the person who's organizing all the things for the community. And employers and residences like that, they're always looking for, our residents are special because Mile High Karate gives them a 25% discount on whatever, or our residents are special because they're going to give them a free month. Our employees are special because there's a special US West discount, and there's a special 1 month certificate that's worth $250, includes the uniform, that US West is lined up for their employees, right? So you start looking for things like that. We did stuff like that with Coors Brewery, which was a huge employer on the west side of town here in Denver. We did things like that with the Denver Broncos, with the Denver Nuggets, with other organizations like that. But you look for big employers, and you look for organizations that have huge numbers of customers. An example was, we did a deal with Ultimate Electronics, and we ended up with the president, the chief sales manager, and the chief operating officer all had their kids in the school, and they were in a $780 a year electronics store. Think of a Best Buy, only like a little more upscale and a little nicer. And so they let us do booths in every one of their stores right at the front entrance. And they did a lot of traffic at the time before they got Amazon. And then they did newspaper inserts in the newspaper. They spent a fortune on advertising. So they did like a full half page of it was a Mile High Karate ad that said, if you buy more than $1,000 at any of the stores this week, we're going to give you a $200 value or $250 value certificate for Mile High Karate, which includes a uniform and a month of lessons. And then we printed really nice certificates in a foil leaf type of envelope that they could keep at the check stand. And by the way, you couldn't get out of one of these stores, for less than $1,000 unless you're just buying a wire or something. So pretty much everybody who came in to buy a flat screen TV or a stereo or car stereo, whatever, ended up with a certificate. But for most of the time, we were parked out in the lobby at the front entrance, so we could talk to everybody on the way in and talk to everybody on the way out and make an appointment for them. And by the way, if they hadn't received their free certificate for buying $1,000 or more, we made sure they got a free introductory offer just the same. Is this giving anybody some ideas? See, and we've only gotten started, right? So these are all like grassroots things you can do. In most cases, they hardly cost any money. The flyer distribution with Domino's, it costs printing the flyers. It's the same idea. I called it the Children's Hospital flyer, but we did it first with Project Concern International. Then we did it with Chuck Norris's Kick Drugs Out of America program. Tim Kovar borrowed it. They started calling it their Teen Center idea. And that's when they assumed you could do nothing with California schools. They kept arguing with me. Oh, you don't understand. None of this stuff you're telling us will work in California. California schools are different. And I said, no, you're full of BS. You're just, haven't figured out the right route. But they were doing so much traffic on that they, in the elementary schools and middle schools, they would have to pick and choose and do a quarter of the elementary schools 1 month, a quarter of them in the next, quarter of them the next, quarter of them the next, and rotate back. Because they were being distributed directly through the school mail. Same thing I was doing here is having the charitable fundraiser flyer distributed directly through the ad building to the school mail, going directly to the kids. Now, if you've got a public school system where they're not physically in class, or they're on a hybrid schedule, if they're on a hybrid schedule, it would work. If they're not physically in class, you got to do something that's a virtual class, and you've got to get them to promote it via email, voicemail. There are other mechanisms, not promoted through, Friday folders.
And
Yes.
when you call, what you got to do is call some of these charities, American Diabetes Association, the JDF, which is the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, the American Cancer Society, whichever one is more active in your area or close by. And then when you call them, you talk to them and you say, look, introduce yourself, your organization, your school, and you say, as part of our community outreach program of giving back to the community, we like to support our local charities and would like to do a fundraiser for you and collect, solicit donations. Would you be on board with that? And then they'll be, ecstatic, because their goal is to raise money for their organization. So anything they can do, and the less work they have to do it, the more likely they're going to jump on it quickly. And all you need, I would always ask them, I said, well, all I need is a letter from you that says that I'm representing you. And then I would take that letter to these businesses like Master Oliver was talking about, Best Buy, or I always like the grocery stores because there's so much traffic. I mean, you guys have seen the Girl Scout cookie girls always in front of that grocery store with a little table.
Well,
you
and by the way, Master Smith, anybody who thinks they can't do live event marketing right now, look at the Girl Scouts camped out at all of the grocery stores and the Walmarts. You
people are still
absolutely
going to the grocery stores.
Yeah, you absolutely can do live event marketing. It's just that the stuff that's available right now has shifted a little bit. But there's a ton of traffic at Price Club. Price Club is always very helpful to local small
Costco,
businesses.
Sam's Club.
Yeah, make sure you're a member. But
And
Walmart.
go to those ones we just said, Sam's Club, Costco, and tell them that you're doing a thing for the American Cancer Society, and they'll let you set up a booth right there. But when I say fill up your schedule, you're going to have to do those probably on the weekend, sometimes during the summer. Well, nowadays kids aren't in school anyway, so these places are busy even all day.
Depends
So you
on
need to
depends
go out
on where
in the
you're at.
daytime.
States with a good governor, the schools are in, kids are in school. States with a wacko governor, they're not.
Some states on and
insane.
off. But
I've been very disappointed in Colorado so far.
so this is what we're talking about when people say, well, I don't know what I can do. If you're not doing those kind of things, if you're not doing some door hangers, if you're not doing flyers, if you're not doing direct mail stuff, it's getting engaged in all these. And that's why we did those 3 videos. And when you watch those, you've got to take notes. Put internal, external, and internet, and then start filling in. Get at least 20 on each one of those, and then put those to a calendar. And I tell everybody, you got to fill up your marketing calendar. And if you don't have a special calendar just for marketing that you're going to put on the wall somewhere in your office that just you and your staff can see.
Well, where everybody can see it. Doesn't matter the students see it. I always had a year at a glance, and then I had a 90-day, right? And the year at a glance is us kind of planning out what we're going to do for the entire year. And then the 90-day, of course, is very specific dates and one thing or another that we're going to be doing. I always have, it's right here at my desk, I have one of the 5-year month at glance calendars, and use that for all the planning. So you have, each month you have a month at a glance, and then you have an overall year at a glance, and you can look at it. Some of us end up, I found myself doing this. I shifted to Google Calendar and iCal and all, when I shifted to the Palm, actually, way back when, I noticed that my ability to keep focused on all those marketing cycles went away. And, I want to have physically on the wall the year at a glance and the quarter at a glance on my desk. the book that I can pull out. And then on your day-to-day appointments, your first intro appointments and so forth, those can be things that you keep electronically and so forth. But Matt Smith, let's shift gears here a little bit and take a deep breath.
And one last thing, just one last thing. Guys, you've got to look at marketing as your jab. That's the one thing that has to constantly be going and moving. You've got to have engagement constantly. Don't just think of yourself as a martial arts school and you teach martial arts lessons and character development. You are also a marketing business. You have got to have those two main thrusts there. Is one is getting the new students in there, and the other one is teaching good classes so they stay.
Yeah. So any questions on any of this so far? What I want to do is pick up on the topic next week and really hone in on a combination of direct mail and a combination of referral systems. And again, one of the things that I think a lot of us got sloppy about is, pre-COVID, you were doing birthday parties, and you were doing buddy days, and you're doing all kinds of stuff like that. Then that stuff got some kinks in the system on having a lot of people in the school. And we got sloppy on the things that make referrals work. And really, from a standpoint of referrals, there's a whole, list of things that make referrals work. And frankly, what most people do in our industry, and what most people think don't work, right? Print up a whole bunch of buddy passes and teach really good classes, and everybody who's really excited will bring their friends. Well, that really doesn't work. You get a few, give everybody 22 buddy passes and expect them to work their neighbors and pitch your thing. That doesn't work. It's worth printing them, but that doesn't really turn into much, right? So I want to go back to referrals and get out of being sloppy on that and get focused on that. Get focused on elementary, middle schools, and prepping at least the fall to be really good on that, as well as ramp up our follow-up of leads and prospects. So we're really good on that. And again, the good thing is last March and April, we shifted really well and started getting, instead of being at the movie theater for Black Widow, we ended up ramping way up the Facebook and the Google marketing. The bad thing is a lot of us got lazy and have one or two things going on rather than that Parthenon of ideas. So we need to expand and develop from there to make sure that we're in really good shape. No questions? No? Well, let me leave you with a couple of things that were on my list here. I always have the TV on in the background. And one of the things that popped up was during COVID in the U.S. consumers saved $1.5 trillion. Now, why is that an important number? A study I quoted for you guys back probably into summer that was done by Harvard of credit card statements was that during the pandemic is the average middle-class consumer paid down their credit cards, had a lower default rate than usual, increased their savings, increased their investments. In other words, what was happening is there were some segments of the population, and interestingly, medical, optional surgeries, a knee replacement, one thing or another, docs who were involved with that. A lot of hospitals took a hit because a lot of the other stuff they were doing went down. We know the travel industry took a hit. We certainly know the movie theater and the concert industry, musicians who are relying on touring for their income were in bad shape. Concert venues, whether they're large or small, were in bad shape. But the average person, to overgeneralize, if they worked for Costco, major grocery store, if they worked for Amazon, they worked for Microsoft, they worked for any of the big software companies, et cetera, they were not only doing fine, in many cases, they were making a lot more money. And in some cases, there's been some relocation going on where their expenses are lower. But what we know, all of the data is that other than a small percentage that were really negatively impacted, 24% 4-year-old high school dropout male who's wait staff or kitchen staff in a restaurant who got furloughed. Is other than that, the average person that's a prospect for us for a student, their disposable income went way up, their credit card debt went way down, their investments went way up, and their spending on discretionary activities, all the things that we normally bitch about, they didn't go to Disney for 2 weeks and spend $25,000. That could have been the renewal for us. They didn't spend a ton of money going to concerts and theater and high-end restaurants. All of that stuff went down. So far from the COVID era being a time when most of our prospects don't have money, it's a time when they actually have more money. Now, there's exceptions to that. There's small pockets, right? But generally, the people that we want to target, especially, let's say, 2-parent household, both of them are college educated, they're doing fine with limited exceptions, right? So one, I want you to keep that in mind. Two, I was trying to pull it back up. I saw a study yesterday that was something like the American Psychological Association, or maybe it was Psychology Today. I know those two are in different levels of credibility, but it was some psychological magazine or organization. I wish I could find it. And what their survey results were is something like 60 or 70% of the population is fearful about going back to a normal work environment, fearful of ending up back in group environments, ending up, excuse me, back in crowds, ending up back in a crowded facility, ending up back in a crowded environment. I thought it was interesting stats. In contrast, anecdotally, what we're finding generally is across the schools that I've gotten direct feedback from is students seem mostly to kind of be over this, not to be fearful of returning, to be anxious to return, with one caveat: if you seem like you're doing a reasonable job, you're doing all the stuff we recommended, you're checking temperatures at the front, you're keeping social distance, you're doing the face mask and one thing or another. If you're doing a reasonable job at creating a little bit over safe environment, if you will, and if you're making a big deal about, we did all these air cleaners and we added this into the HVAC system, we put the HEPA 3 filters in the system, we put the UV filters in the system. If you're communicating all of that stuff, in fact, you did it, and you're maintaining what appears to be a safe environment. One of the schools I talked to yesterday said out of 280 students, they had 3 that were a little hesitant about coming back in. One of them was the kid lives with the grandparents who have some additional conditions, so they were fearful of that. Well, if that holds up, that's a lot lower number than I would have expected. I would have expected, at this point, 25% of the students to be fearful of coming back. The study that I saw yesterday was more like 65%. However, I do think the students that we have, the families that we have, are different. Of course, if they do a study like that and they study it across the population, whether a parent of an 8-year-old should be fearful about their 8-year-old is a completely different question than whether a 72-year-old diabetic should be fearful of going out into crowds, right? So I think what we need to do is keep our finger on the pulse. So far, anecdotally in the schools, people are much more willing and excited about getting back in than, frankly, I had predicted. Matt Smith, anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered that pretty good.
Yeah. One other thing, and I like to keep kind of posting this to give everybody some perspective. And again, this thing has become ridiculously politicized across everything, which seems to me to be incredibly inappropriate. But here's again a number. I posted a graph. Let me find it again. I posted it in the member group. but I posted the graph of COVID deaths by age. And then I did some additional minor analysis of it. And here's what it was, is if, well, I keep losing it, hang on. Basically 24 and up. So age 24 and up. And so in other words, excluding the kids market and the college age market, the death rate above 24 is something like 99.5% of all deaths. And then to add to that is the, if you take 44 and up, which statistically for all of us would be, essentially all of our students, right? It's something like 95.7%. Again, I posted, I keep losing it here. But if you look at that graph, I think it's an important thing to keep perspective in mind. Now, I don't believe that most of our students will have that level of perspective, because if they've been watching the news and so forth, I'm sorry, I misquoted that. If it's over 44, the number is 97.5%. In other words, 44 and down, it's only 2.5% of the total COVID deaths were under 44. Does that make sense to everybody? And then if you look at the graph, that's even kind of an artificial cutoff, because where it really gets hairy is in the 65 and up category. Gets a little worse in the 55 and up category. The chart I did didn't address comorbidities, et cetera. But from a standpoint of the audience that we typically have, and this is all CDC data, is the level of fear that they should have versus the level of fear that is getting perpetrated are on completely different planes, right? It all comes back to the argument about public schools, whether they should be in session or out of session right now. Is in flu season, it's a problem because we know that kids are carriers. COVID, we know that it's the opposite. Kids aren't particularly carriers. They're not giving it to each other. They don't have much problems. If they do test positive, they mostly don't have any problems with it. And they're very unlikely, in fact, to give it to teachers or to give it to you for that matter. So just something to keep in mind there as you're looking at how people are thinking. And the contrast is one study that shows a pretty high level of people who are still kind of fearful about going out into crowds. On the contrast, anecdotally, what we're seeing in the schools so far is a very small percentage. I think Paul in New Jersey, which arguably was right in the belly of the beast between Atlantic City, Philly, and New York, they were at, what were they at, Master Smith? Something like 97% of their students were back physically in class by the fall.
Yeah, he only had a few that were actually online.
Yeah. Any last question before we call it a day? Well, the takeaway is do more stuff. Let's build out that Parthenon. An awful lot of what we talked about today doesn't, the stuff with big groups takes a little bit of effort to get it set up. And then once it's set up, those are things you can perpetuate forever, right? The things like rack cards and so forth, that takes a little bit of effort to get it out the first time. But once it's out the first time, then it's really easy to maintain. And even that, it's, I think people overestimate how much effort it is. I could get out 300 locations with rack cards within, 4 or 5 hours a day for 3 days. So it really doesn't take that much effort. And like you said, Master Smith, you were just giving all of your staff, and I would add all your black belts, 25 bandit signs, and telling them to put them out every week. I also see, by the way, people who get frustrated and pissed off when their rack cards or their bandit signs get thrown away. It's like, well, okay, that happens.
We learn also strategically where to place them. We keep track of it on our map, so we know where they are and how long they stay there. But it's all part of the learning process. Again, congratulations to Delfino for a good month in February and starting strong in March. So let's keep it rolling. So you finish a good one too in March, Delfino. But it's a nice start. Everybody else, keep us posted on some of your stats. So Bob is going to be setting up a progress check for a lot of you. And part of that progress check, if I don't have your stats, then it's kind of hard for me
It's Brendan
to
Burchard.
do a progress check of it. So do get your stats together and then give Bob a call, and then he'll set up a time for me to go over everything with you, and we can work out a good game plan for you to take you to the next level.
Absolutely. Okay. On that note, we'll call it a day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.